Hi, I've just been for a walk in the vineyard. It was a beautiful day, and it got me thinking about the causes and effects of plant diseases on agricultural production, namely grape phylloxera, which is the biggest threat to worldwide wine production. This is Justin Jarrett, and he's from Seesaw Wines, one of the local vineyards in Orange. And he says that having a biosecurity policy in place in his vineyard has helped him protect it from the grape phylloxera. There was an article in The Land a little while ago where he was discussing this biosecurity policy that he's introduced. The other thing that you'll be familiar with is Orange Food Week and the forage event. At the forage event, you can see in the picture on the left, the tourists are asked to walk through footbeds as they enter. That's probably the biggest threat now, is tourism for the vineyards, where the little bug will get in on the shoes of punters' feet. So grape phylloxera is a devastating soft-bodied insect. It's a pest of grapevines worldwide, and as I said, it's the biggest threat to wine production all over the world. At present, the endemic strains are confined to a number of geographical regions in Victoria and southern New South Wales. You can see the red is the phylloxera infested zones, the yellow is the risk zone, and the green zones are presently exclusion zones. So the cause of the disease is the Phylloxera insect. We can see in the photo on the left-hand side up the top, we've got the adult and we've got the nymphs here, and we've also got the eggs stages. It's a very complicated life cycle. The adults can lay around 200 eggs per cycle, and also they're capable of parthenogenesis, which is like aphids, where they have asexual reproduction, so they can reproduce really, really quickly. This diagram is old, but it's better than all of the other ones I could find. It shows that the life cycle has a sexual part and an asexual part. So there's the ability of the organism to produce sexually from eggs, but also asexually, and so it can become quite prolific very quickly. There's a life cycle section above the ground in the leaves, and then also in below, and that's when they infest the roots and cause damage. These pictures here, this one I took just so that you can see the relative size of the adult. This is a match head, so they're very, very tiny. And in this photo we can see the adult and the nymphs and the eggs as well. This is a picture of the roots, and we can see the infestation of the roots by the phylloxera. So the symptoms of phylloxera infestation include slow and stunted shoot growth and yellowing of the leaves. And when these galls form, these little tiny pockets on the surface of the leaf, they cause the leaf to roll into a ball. So that lovely flat surface that's needed for photosynthesis sort of disappears. And so the plant the growth is stunted because it can't photosynthesize as effectively. The galls on the root hairs, up here you can see some roots, and the galls are those little balls that will form on the roots as well as the leaves, and they basically stop the root functioning. The swelling of the root tissue and subsequent decay through the secondary fungal or bacterial infections will cause the roots to die, and then obviously the grape will die because it can't get the nutrients and water that it needs. So it's a devastating disease. So prevention, phylloxera movement restrictions are across the world. To prevent the spread of phylloxera from infested areas, states and territories have legislation which prohibit the movement of risk vectors, and those include things like the grape products, the wine equipment, machinery, vehicles and things that visit the vineyards. Each state and territory has slightly different legislation, but if you're moving and visiting the vineyards, you have to comply with the local rules. As I mentioned before, the foot bars, we can see them here, are used at Orange's Food Week to stop the spread of phylloxera. One of the ladies from Sydney that was visiting was complaining and saying, these boots are worth $500, and the farmer just really looked her in the eye and said, well, my farm's worth $3 million and the industry is worth $1.6 billion. So she really knew that the threat was real. So the potential impact on agriculture, obviously, for the wine industry, the only way to get rid of phylloxera is to remove the vines, to dig them all up, and that costs around $30,000 per hectare. As I said, the phylloxera can be spread by machinery and equipment, as well as tools, clothing, shoes, etc., and is a massive threat to that $1.6 billion wine industry in New South Wales. Wine regions have adopted ways to deter travellers from bringing root stock into the region. There's warning signs, and there's also huge significant fines, a $2 million fine for introducing phylloxera. Now, the second disease we're going to consider is citrus canker, which is a highly contagious bacterial disease caused by Xanthomonas citri. It's a notifiable plant disease in New South Wales, and all above ground parts of the citrus trees can be infected. Severe infection can lead to defoliation, dieback, blemished fruit, and premature fruit drop. So obviously the market, the farmers can't sell the fruit if it's infected. So the cause, as I said, is the bacteria. We can see this up here, they're rod-shaped, so they're bacillus type bacteria. They enter the leaves and plants through stomates and cuts and wounds in the leaves, and the stems caused by hedging or pruning. And we can see these little fimbriae on the edge of the rod-like bacteria, and they assist in the bacteria getting into the plant. They've got sticky ends, and we'll talk about those adaptations in the next section. So transmission occurs when the bacteria are carried by wind-blown rain, and the rain lands on the plant. The wind-driven rain can cause congestion of the tissues, and the bacteria can enter through the stomates. Once they're in the plant, then obviously it'll grow up, and this one here shows this diagram here shows hedging and pruning can cause another wound. So anywhere where there's a area for the bacteria to get in, they'll get in, and then again the cycle continues as the water's splashed and sent around to the next plant. The symptoms of citrus canker, the leaves will go a yellowy colour, like in this diagram. They develop watery dots, so where the weather is very moist, it'll be worse off. So if you're in a dry environment, it's good to because sometimes the bacteria will be washed off and then evaporate. Whereas in tropical regions where there's lots of water and the water pools, they'll be more susceptible. The young lesions project above the leaf surface on both sides, and the lesions can become corky and develop crater-like depressions. So these little corky, hard, they're like the gauze that we looked at before. The citrus canker lesions can occur in groups, like I said, where the water pools on the leaf, and in wet conditions the lesions rapidly enlarge and flatten out, so that the whole leaf can have this corky appearance. The infection can lead to early leaf fall, and obviously if the leaves are falling off, then the plant's not photosynthesizing, so the growth will be affected. In the branches, we can also see these corky cankers on the woody stems as the infection spreads from the leaves to the twigs and branches, and the bark may discolour and appear red. And then in the fruit, we see similar things. So the scabs and pitting, the lesions initially resemble large oil glands, and then they can become dark and corky, like on the leaves and the fruits. Multiple lesions on the fruits are typically only seen where the cases of the foliage are really infected badly. And so obviously if the fruit's got these cankers on them, they're not going to be fit for market. So the crop's destroyed. The movement of citrus canker bacteria within the canopy of an infected tree is aided by moisture, which I've said. Spraying can also increase the rate of transmission within an infected orchard. Contamination of tools and equipment, orchard workers, birds, insects can all spread citrus canker. And long distance spread occurs through the movement of infected plants or parts of plants. So if the farmer is looking to propagate or to start their orchard from scratch, they've got to be really careful that the stock that they're getting in isn't infected. The prevention is the same as the prevention for the Phylloxera disease. So this poster here from the Department of Industries is produced and practiced by a lot of farms to decrease the rate of transmission. So the practice of come clean, go clean ensures that all staff and visitors to the farms are instructed and adhere to the business management hygiene requirements. The other way farmers can do it, can prevent the disease, is to keep really good records, and then if there is an outbreak, then that can be traced back. The impact on agriculture of citrus canker is obviously very large. The last big outbreak was in emerald in 2005 in Queensland. But since then, it's actually been eradicated. Every outbreak that's occurred has been confined, and Australia's free of citrus canker now. It can spread quickly across long distances, and it's endemic up in Papua New Guinea and Indonesia at the moment. So it could come across. So probably farmers in Queensland and Northern Territory are most at risk. The citrus industry produces around 650,000 tonnes of fruit per year, and the export market for this is worth 550 to 600 million. Those figures came from 2016, I think. But obviously, if there is an outbreak of citrus canker, then that crop will be affected, and the export market will also be affected, and farmers and all through down the chain. So in summary, both diseases have the potential to be devastating in Australia. Awareness, education and biosecurity measures can help protect crops from these costly diseases. And here are the references that were used. Okay, I hope you found that helpful.